1881 AD, 57:75 AM. Alexander II of Russia is assassinated, this being 36 years before the Russian noble family of the Romanovs are murdered by the Jewish Bolsheviks in 1917. The revised version of the Holy Scriptures is published and becomes an instant success exactly 270 years after the publication of the King James Authorised Version of the Bible in 1611. The British Museum quietly removes a prominent and famous display of a 5-foot 5-inch human female fossil embedded in hard limestone, discovered in 1812 off the French Caribbean coast of Guadeloupe, fearing that it was contrary to the rage at the time among scholars, evolutionary theory. The Great Comet of 1881 was photographed on June 30th. Clara Barton founded the American Red Cross. The famous gun battle between the Outlaws and the Earp brothers near the OK Corral occurred in Tombstone, Arizona. 1. Evolution Cruncher. 2. Introduction to Comets. 1882 AD, 57:76 AM. Britain invades Egypt, occupied by the Turks. This was 1260 years since the start of the Islamic after Hijra calendar in 622 AD. And 2488 years, 1244 plus 1244, after 607 BC, when Egypt was subdued by the Chaldean king Nebuchadnezzar II, crown prince of Babylon. 2488 Annus Mundi, 1407 BC, was the year the ancient Israelites invaded Canaan. On July 3rd, the people of Lebanon, Connecticut, witnessed 2 triangular-shaped vessels flying in the sky over the moon. They were large, moved toward one another and then vanished. Later, over England in November, a gigantic cigar-shaped flying object was seen to move slowly through the skies, observed by telescope of the Royal Observatory of Greenwich on the 17th. Also in November, another great comet appeared in the inner system, and again it was photographed like its predecessor in 1881. This comet passed between the Earth and the Sun, but no observable effects were noted. With hostilities little abated in Russia between the Christian Russians and the Jews, Russia passed the May laws against the Jews. These laws stopped them from certain financial practices, removing their businesses, and even forced many to migrate back into Eastern Europe, back to the region known as the Pale of Settlement, set up in 1772. This region was almost half the size of Western Europe. Immediately, international Jewish financiers tried to collapse the Russian economy. The Tsarist Russian government began negotiations with the banking house of Rothschild for a loan. But the Rothschilds backed out of the loan because the Tsar would not allow the Jews back in. The Tsar published widely an edict that read, quote, "For some time the government has given its attention to the Jews and to their relations to the rest of the inhabitants of the empire, with a view of ascertaining the sad condition of the Christian inhabitants brought about by the conduct of the Jews in business matters. With few exceptions, they, the Jews, have as a body devoted their attention not to enriching or benefiting the country, but to defrauding by their wiles the inhabitants, and particularly its poor inhabitants. This conduct of theirs has called forth protest on the part of the people, to put an end to the oppression practiced by the Jews on the inhabitants, and to free the country of their malpractices," unquote. Unfortunately, in less than 40 years, the Jewish Bolsheviks would succeed in taking over Russia and exterminating over 20 million Christian Russians in retaliation for the May laws and other historical controversies between the Jews and Russians. 1. Book of the Damned. 3. Introduction to Comets. 4. Jewish Supremacism. 1883 AD, 57:77 AM. Archaeologist Naville excavated the Egyptian city ruins of Pithom, which was one of the treasure cities of Pharaoh, that the Israelites as slaves were forced to build. Naville found the city walls and noted that the walls were constructed of clay bricks. The clay bricks had straw in them among the lowest courses, but higher up in the walls the straw was lessened until the highest bricks had no straw at all. He noticed that the middle courses had straw that had been plucked up by the roots. This discovery confirms the Exodus story of the oppression of the Israelites, forced to make bricks with less and less straw. In 1908, Kyle would visit Pithom to confirm this discovery. For unexplained reasons, there was a whole wave of missing persons vanished from Montreal, Canada in July. Astronomers report seeing a train of irregularly shaped objects passing between Earth and the Sun. An earthquake on the island of Ischia off Naples was attended by a tumultuous sea. Earthquakes in southern Turkey and Russia dislodged great chunks of ice from off Mount Ararat. Turks exploring the region after the quakes discovered the ancient prow of a gigantic ship protruding from a high glacier. The Turkish government investigated and officially announced the discovery of Noah's Ark, which made major headlines in the United States. This was the exact site of Noah's Ark according to Flavius Josephus in his Antiquities. On the Indonesian island of Krakatoa, the volcano Anak exploded with a force of 200 megaton bombs, which excavated a hole at the bottom of the Pacific 1,900 feet deep and ejected 6-foot boulders as far as 25 miles into the atmosphere. The eruption of Krakatoa was the loudest sound ever heard by man, a thunderous detonation heard as far as 3,000 miles away. The shockwave and accompanying earthquake were felt around the world. The blast sent a tidal wave 100 foot high over areas of Java and Sumatra, destroying almost 300 towns and killing about 36,000 people. Volcanic ash left a dust veil around the entire world for years, darkening the earth and making the winters more severe. While volcanic ash was definitely thrust into the atmosphere, another reason for the spectacular sunsets and colder winters was the blanketing of Earth in a cosmic dust veil, first reported in February and March, 6 months prior to the Anak explosion. In November was seen a strange comet-like object with 2 tails. 1. Exodus. Secret Places of the Lion. 2. Our Haunted Planet. 3. Cataclysm. 4. Secrets of Nostradamus. 5. The First Genesis. 6. In Search of Noah's Ark. 8. Civilization or Barbarism. 9. Book of the Damned.